The blending of the family is by far my greatest triumph. It truly is. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I say I because it has certainly been a we thing, but it has been I that has really been pushing the blending. And I think the feminine energy is the collaborative energy. And so I took that role gladly. And so I do feel like I can say, and it is my biggest triumph.
I think I know you better. Oh, if I knew your recipe. How much love do you put in the bowl when you cook from the soul, trying to feed your family? And do you have hand-me-down treasures from grandma's handwritten letters? You know, the ones with the measurements. And do you have a lot of fun and laugh while you're prepping it? What'd you have for dinner last night? For your daughters and your dinner last night.
Today on Dinner Last Night, we're sitting down with the amazing Virginia Craddock, founder of Inside Out Agency, a multi-brand showroom dedicated to shifting the way we think about fashion and what we consume, and what it takes to create a more sustainable fashion industry for everyone, not just those who can afford it. Virginia grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where early on she found a love for crafting and fascination with how things were made. This led to her career in fashion and also informs how she thinks about cooking for her family. On a personal level, Virginia's greatest triumph is her work to create a blended family with her partner and their 3 boys. And she tells us exactly how she did it, while making us all cry, and what their favorite go-to meal is. This episode is full of parallels between fashion and food, stories of how traditions evolve over time and how we adopt new ones for our own families, how Virginia thinks about social media, conversation about the art of gathering, and above all, how clarity is the theme that connects everything and sets us up for success in all facets of our life. We can't wait for you to listen to this episode. Hi, Virginia. Welcome to Dinner Last Night.
Hi, thanks for having me on your podcast.
We're so excited. So what did you have for dinner last night?
Last night, we happened to have over another family that's staying in town for spring break. And I cooked a stew, a Brazilian stew called Moqueca, which is actually a go-to meal for me when I'm having guests over. I believe you've had it, Dimity.
I have. It's so good.
And we did that with a heart of palm salad, which I've never made, but is also a traditional Brazilian dish. And then 2 of the kids made lava cake for dessert, and that was super fun.
I've never had this stew, so I would love to know what's in it.
So moqueca is a traditional Brazilian stew. It typically has a whitefish or shrimp in it. We made it with shrimp because kids in my household tend to be on the fence about fish in general. And the reason that that dish is in my repertoire is because my parents lived in Brazil and did Peace Corps in the 70s. And so my parents have split. But each of them has made these 2 specific Brazilian dishes, moqueca and then feijoada, which is the traditional black bean dish, my entire life. And they're very different, actually, when each of them make it. But I grew up having that in both of my households because of the time they spent there. And it's really delicious. It's got coconut milk in it, and it has a tomato and red pepper sort of base to it. I'm now sensitive to red pepper as I've gotten older, so my moqueca is taking on a life of its own as well. So last night we did corn and green beans and tomatoes instead of the red pepper base, which is really untraditional. And I was thinking how my dad would be like, "Oh, that's not moqueca," but moqueca in my house.
I love that. I feel like that is sort of the passing down of traditions in a nutshell, right? Everybody sort of adds their different flair and things evolve over time. And that's so cool. I forgot that your parents had done the Peace Corps in Brazil, and that's where this love for Brazilian food came from. But I love how you can adapt or adopt your own traditions from other cultures. Emma and I have had a little bit of that in our house as well with Jamaican food.
Jamaican food.
Yes. The short stories. We grew up with actually, Emma, you should tell the story. You're so much better at telling it. Well, I mean, our family is like a small UN, and one of our uncles moved to Jamaica in his 20s, had three kids with two different Jamaican women, and is still there. And he and our cousins come back usually around Christmas time. And somewhere along the way, he brought back cans of Ackee. And
Ackee and saltfish
yes,
for
so
for
he taught,
breakfast, right?
yes, with sourdough. So that became our Christmas morning tradition, Ackee and saltfish. Yes.
So my ex, my son's father,
Oh, that's
is
right. I forgot about,
half
yes.
Jamaican and half Norwegian, and his mom always made ackee and saltfish. That was like the one dish she made because her husband was a chef from the Czech Republic. And so he did all the cooking, except she would make that and then she would make peas and rice. But that I would say that actually the few dishes that she made were one of the early things that brought us together because I find the Jamaican way of interacting to be like hard to break into sometimes. And her and my relationship with this woman was a slow go, but it was definitely through her cooking and through my interest in just that cultural side of her that we connected actually. But I love ackee and saltfish. I think it's great.
It's so good. I met the woman we're talking about, June. When I met her, I completely forgot about this connection, but I asked her about Ackee and saltfish, and I actually just found Ackee at the Hannafords in Uptown Kingston and bought 2 cans. They didn't have saltfish, so maybe we can have a little Ackee and saltfish breakfast soon. So I wanted to go back to your dinner because we had this dinner, this amazing meal for your birthday this year. And it was so, I mean, the food was delicious. I loved that the kids made this incredible cake that I couldn't get enough of. But there was also so much intention behind the meal, just the way that you brought people together. We stood in a circle before we ate. That's so my jam. I love it. Do you remember that?
I do. I had forgotten that part, but
It was just so beautiful. And there's this book that Emma turned me on to, which I'm going to forget the name. Was it The Art of Gathering?
by Priya
Yeah.
Parker.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah. And it's all about intentional gathering, right? When you bring people, when you host a party or a dinner or something, really having a clear intention for that. And I really felt that at your birthday dinner. So I just wanted to hear more about how you approach cooking for groups of people, how you plan the meal. It sounds like you have a repertoire that you typically go to, but what's your process?
So just to touch on the Art of Gathering, I haven't actually read it, but it keeps coming up for me. And I did listen to an interview with her on the Ezra Klein podcast. And I was really just touched by so many of the things that they talked about. And it made me feel a lot more confident in the way that I do host, which is that I actually am not a very like it doesn't come easy for me to just like whip up 6 dishes meanwhile like entertaining at the same time. Like I get very flustered and in the last few years, I've just allowed myself to sink into that. And like, if a dish doesn't make it to the table, or if something doesn't get finished the right way, or if I put corn and beans in the traditional moqueca, like I used to be very by the book and like I would run out to get that one last ingredient if I didn't have it.
This feels like a
But
metaphor for parenting.
yes, it kind of is. You start really by the book and then you just let it all unravel. And I think I've realized that my priorities have certainly shifted in hosting. And I do love the part of bringing the people together and then taking a moment to just like recognize that we're all here celebrating something or just being together or whatnot. And like, I love to circle up. I love to hold hands. I love to say things. I mean, I love prayer, even though I wouldn't call myself religious. I think that just taking a breath, a beat, a moment to collectively appreciate where you are in that moment with the people around you is a beautiful thing. And dinner parties are a great excuse to do just that, you know? But for instance, you've also been to my holiday party. We throw a Christmas party every year, and I make a ham every year for it because that's the easiest thing for me to do. I find that by doing the same thing, it becomes easier. But I think it's really funny because a very good friend of my partner's just a few weeks ago when we were out for a birthday dinner said to me, Virginia, you can't order for everybody. You like to eat pork too much. And I was like, what? But he took that from having come to my Christmas parties 3 years in a row, and I always serve this giant ham. And I was just laughing so hard because if it's just me eating dinner by myself, I'm eating cubes of raw tofu and like cabbage, you know, like I'm nowhere near the pork. So I think it's really funny how sometimes what you serve at parties creates a story about who you are. And often it's not the type of food that you actually lean towards for your family or for yourself.
That's a really interesting distinction. And I have heard about this epic Christmas party, by the way. Yeah, it's true. I mean, we prepare food for gatherings often quite differently than a family meal or, I mean, which is usually last minute, right? I also love what you're saying about the way that you're starting to relax into hosting and not having it, needing it to be perfect. And it reminded me of another great book called Meditations for Mortals. And in that book, he talks about scruffy hospitality and how when we give people a window into what our home is actually like, you know, we don't pick up the living room, we leave crumbs on the counter, and we throw a meal together that may not be perfect. It's actually an honor and a gesture of intimacy because it shows that we have trust and closeness to people. So I love that scruffy hospitality perspective.
Yeah.
And it's actually not he's quoting someone else, but he elaborates on it.
Well, and in the interview between Ezra Klein and Priya Parker, Ezra talks about that specific thing, but it being a cultural choice and difference. Like he talks about showing up to somebody's house for dinner for the first time, and their house was a mess. The parents were in their pajamas, and he and his wife were like dressed up because they had been invited to somebody's house for the first time, and they had like, you know, a gift or something with a bow. And the two couples immediately just started laughing, and they were like, we're both doing what we thought would make the other feel the most comfortable, which that would show honor to the other people, saying, we want to be close to you. And I thought that was really interesting that that can show up in a very different way for different people.
That
so
is
interesting. And it's also such a product, I think, of how we're raised too, right? Like we grew up seeing our parents throw dinner parties where everyone did dress up and the house is always immaculate. And so we feel this pressure to do the same thing. But in reality, that creates more stress, and then it puts you in a different state of mind for hosting, I think.
Well, and I think that's what Bree is also in her book. I actually haven't read the book either, but I've listened to several podcasts about it. And
Same. We should all read the book after this.
I think part of what she's suggesting is a predetermined consensus between the person hosting and the people coming. So everybody knows what to expect instead of trying to figure it out, because that uncertainty often will make people feel uncomfortable, nervous, and sort of override this ability to relax and just settle into the experience of being together.
I think that's it. It's all about the clarity before, like the clarity in the invite, so that there's no uncertainty and anxiety as far as how to show up in so many layered ways, how to show up. And I love that because there's so many ways that when you are just super clear, then it opens an avenue to invite people maybe that you don't know, or to do something like in my neighborhood, for instance, we only know a handful of the people. And I've been like, oh, I should set up a table down at the post office and try and have like coffee on a Sunday or whatever. But I'm realizing actually a very intentional personal invite, just saying, let's do coffee at our house. We don't know the neighborhood. Something very small but very specific would actually probably draw more people in than this like big to do down at the post office. Like, I think that would be unclear, and thus people would be like, nah. So, yeah, I like this idea of the intention and then being very clear in the communication so that everybody can show up ready.
Hi, friends. Quick pause to say thank you so much for listening. It's really nice to know we're not just sitting here talking to ourselves. Though, to be fair, we'd probably be doing that anyways. Definitely. Season 2 is our love letter to the Hudson Valley, and we're thrilled to be sharing our guests' extraordinary stories and wisdom with you. Did you know that for each episode, we're also offering an exclusive giveaway that includes a gift from one of our guests or a copy of one of our own cookbooks? You don't want to miss these. And it's so easy to enter the giveaway. All you need to do is head to bit.ly DLN giveaway. That's DLN giveaway, all lowercase, and enter your email. The link's also in the show notes. All right, back to the episode. Well, I want to circle back on food and talk about your upbringing in the Blue Ridge Mountains, but I can't help segueing into your role at Inside Out Agency, which you founded, and in fashion, and how you are working to bring that kind of clarity to consumers. Because it seems like a common thread where, you know, often, and please correct anything if it's not right, but from what I understand, you're helping people who buy clothing to understand how is it actually made, who's designing it, where is it coming from, and giving this more holistic sense of value to beautiful and unique pieces of art that you can wear, and adding that clarity to every purchase. So can you tell us more about how that shows up in your work?
Yes. Well, I think that you summarized it pretty well in that, I mean, we all buy things, we all wear things. Fashion is all a part of our life, whether we think that we value or prioritize it. And I think like anything else that we consume in this world, when you know about something in depth and when you're able to connect with it, it creates such a deeper value for yourself and a sense of understanding and ultimately fulfillment in having something. So I know that sounds kind of heady. And all my life, I've been really interested in craft. Like, I have always said I'm not an artist. Like, I still draw stick figures when I want to get something across. My 11-year-old son and I have around the same level of artistry with a pencil or with paints, and he struggles with it. And I tell him I'm 45 and this is me, and I'm okay with it. But I've always loved how things are made, and I've always loved crafting. So from a young age, always just, you know, from like the pot holders to the shrinky dinks to all of it. Like, I just loved crafting. And I started sewing when I was 12, I think. And I never got really great at sewing, but I really enjoyed knowing how things were made. And of course, anything that I made for myself, I kept forever. You know, I still have things that I made. And anything in any pieces that were passed down to me from my mother, even if I cut them up and redid them, those are the things I'm holding on to, right? As I entered into my profession in the fashion industry, it just became very clear to me that the more that we know about how things are made, who made those things, where they were made, the more they become little precious treasures, right? The more we know, the more precious they are, the more we treasure them. And the less it is that we just relate them to what the outside trends of the world are. They become more intrinsic into our own experience of life. And so what we do at Inside Out is we have a multi-brand showroom where we represent process-oriented or craft-oriented brands, and then we align them with the right kind of stores that can help tell that story. And they don't have to be, everything doesn't need to be precious. Like a t-shirt can be kept for a very long time, especially if you know what it's made out of, why it's made out of that, what country it was made in, and why it was made there. The knowing is what creates the value. And then I believe that the memories created while wearing stuff adds the value. And then if you take that piece and pass it on, it's already holding so much value, especially if you are verbally able to pass the story with it. So it's all these layers of meaning that actually create value. And that's what we're trying to share. And that's what is the difference between something being disposable and something being cherished. And that's kind of it.
That's so beautiful. I feel like you're just redefining fashion, and that just resonates so much. I mean, I have pieces that they don't fit me anymore, but that my mom passed down to us from when she was a teenager. And I used to love wearing these things. She had made them. She was really into sewing. This was, way before fashion was easily accessible. So she'd see something and make it for herself. And I wore those pieces forever. And some of them I think we've even held on to for Emma's daughters. Emma has 2 daughters. I have 2 boys, as you know. And so I even hold on to things because of the memories that I want to pass on to my nieces, because I know how special that feels. So I love that. I love the approach that you're taking.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that beyond even heirloom sort of fashion situations, it's really important to look at it within your everyday. And in that, I mean that when you go, let's say, to Uptown Kingston to a local store there and choose to buy a pair of jeans from that independent store, and the woman there talks about why she opened her store there and tells you why she chose this brand of jeans to carry, and she thinks that they make the best cuts and that their cotton is the softest cotton. When all that happens and then you wear those jeans, there's, I think, a less conscious, I don't know, subconscious, feeling that you want to hold on to that maybe longer than that pair of jeans that you walked into Target and bought. And they may not be produced more or less sustainably, let's say. We don't know. But the act of consuming within your community in a more conscious way has created value for you. Every time you put that pair of jeans on, somewhere in there, you're reliving that experience. It's created value for the woman who opened that store in your community. It's that sort of subtle transition of energy around consumption that I think is really important. For instance, something I'm working on right now is pulling myself away. This is very intimate now in many ways, from buying cheap underwear. And I mean, I buy underwear from Aerie. I don't know if you know what Aerie is, but 5 for 25. They make bamboo and cotton underwear. I love it. And I'm like, yes, I get that, and I could keep buying that forever, but I could also be buying beautiful underwear from Shira at Auto Body. And every time I put those on my body, I would know that I supported her and I would feel it. Like when I got dressed for this interview, I was like, okay, this is one of the first shirts that was designed in the clothing line that I co-own right now. So it creates a feeling for me. This little necklace I bought on a beach in Mexico with my oldest girlfriends that travel together every year. My jeans are from a sustainable denim company out of Paraguay. And I'm trying to think of what underwear I have on, and I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's from Aerie. And I'm just, I would rather, at this point in my life, would rather spend $30 on that pair of cotton underwear than 5 and create that meaning for myself and for Shira and for everybody that worked to make that pair of underwear.
I love this so much. Dimity and I have a thread with our best friends from college, and I can't tell you how many times we have circulated links for underwear on a quest to find the best underwear. And I recently, do you know the company Third Love?
Yes.
So there, it's much more expensive. It's like $30 a pair. And I found that when I switched to buying their underwear, and I haven't tried all of Shira's, so I'm going to try them too, I actually take much better care of my underwear and they last a lot longer instead of being these disposable, tiny clothing items that we feel like we just tear through. So why not just get it cheaply?
I think that that's true. The taking care of something that you value, and you value it because you invested in it. And you invested in it because when it's well made by people who are making a living wage, it costs that much. And that's a really important point because, for instance, my father is an architect and he, I would say, leans into the sustainable, community-driven architecture world. And I really look up to him in that way. But then he's constantly like, wearing things that he's like, I bought that at Costco. It was $20. And I'm like, Dad, and what can you do for $20? Like minimum wage in New York is $17 or $18 an hour. You cannot even begin to make a t-shirt in 1 hour. Think about it. Like, just think about that. And so that's, I come back to that often because we're a family of 5 here, and we definitely think about how much things cost a lot. But I'll drink a $20 martini, no problem. But then like a $30 pair of underwear that I will wear every 7th day for the next 3 years. Things to think about.
It's so true.
Emma here with another quick dance break. Okay. Anyway, if you're enjoying season 2, we'd love to stay in touch through our Substack newsletter. You can subscribe at the link in the show notes, easy peasy, or head to dinnerlastnightpod.com and subscribe to our newsletter from there. When you subscribe, you'll get one of my free monthly meal plans for stress-free, delicious dinners that your whole family will love. And trust me, I know, and so does Dim, because we've tested all these recipes on our kids. Let's head back to the episode now.
I have a question for you. I've thought about this in terms of cost because I think I love the approach that you take with fashion, and that's what I strive towards, like having, for me, fewer pieces, fewer items in my wardrobe that have all these things, right? That I know how they're made. I know who made them. I'm wearing one of Catherine's sweaters right now, and just sort of having this deeper awareness of where things come from and how they're made and all of that. And we live in a world where the cost of, let's call it like locally made products or even healthier food is less accessible for the general public. So how do you think about that? Like, how do we work towards making these things more accessible to everyone? And I think, we live in such a different time now, right? Like many years ago, things just were handmade. They were better made. People had less stuff. Now we have fast fashion where people can buy, a pair of shoes for $10 at Walmart. And that is what some people can afford. So how do we address this? How do we make better quality things accessible for more people?
I don't have the answer to that, but I think there are many avenues that lead to that change. One of them has to do with regulation. It shouldn't be on each of us to choose the thing that is not made by child labor or by XYZ or with chemicals that are known to be carcinogenic. That should not be on the consumer. our government does need to step in and create better regulation around fashion. And it's happening in places like Europe. They're so much farther ahead of us. So that's one very clear thing that we're not doing that would help just create this standard that then we can start with. Another thing on a positive side, secondhand clothing has zero stigma now. Like literally circularity is happening. And for the younger generation, finding something on the secondhand market often is considered way cooler than buying something new. So that's a huge shift in perception and just the cultural understanding and feeling around used clothing. And I think that is so cool. So that's another thing. And then I think this is something that I'm just starting to focus in on for my own business. I think asking the consumer to create the change is a really big ask, because then it means that we're trying to educate every last person so that collectively we can see a shift. In my business, I work with the middleman, which is the buyer. So I work with the buyers that choose the product that go into stores, big and small, all across the world. And if I focus on the buyer as somebody to educate and change, then we can see that shift a lot sooner. Like if my buyer, let's say at Urban Outfitters, understands the difference between viscose, which is a man-made fabric, and viscose, which is FSC certified, meaning that they're using forestation practices that are not decimating the world's rainforest and all sorts of forests. If they choose to only buy viscose, which is a cheaper fabric that is FSC certified, then we're making a huge change, because that buyer is buying, I don't know, 6,000 units of viscose product in one season. So that's where I'm looking at there being space to make change more quickly. And that's what I want to explore more in my own business. Shifting the middleman, shifting their perception and and what they know. Because if they ask the brands, hey, is that FSC certified? Then the brands go, oh my God, I need to source FSC certified viscose. It's like the trickle down effect, the trickle up and trickle down effect is so much greater than just each of us being like, what's viscose? But in addition to that, I think that we need to educate at a very young level about clothing, because just the way a lot of kids don't know what grows on a tree and what comes out of a ground that they put in their mouth, most kids have no idea that wool comes from an animal and that cotton comes from the ground and that polyester is made with oil. And that's crazy, because those are all huge distinctions, and that's what they're putting on their body every single day. And a lot of that comes just the same way in food. Like, it wasn't until the 50s that we started like mass making food, right? Well, it's around the same time that we started mass making clothing. And that change, it went viral. It went so quickly that we didn't stop to think about, well, now how do we educate our kids if they're not growing it in their backyard? If their mom's not making their clothes, how do they know what these things are?
Yeah, I'm glad you named it. There's so many parallels to food and fashion. I'm learning so much right now, but I also appreciate that you are saying it shouldn't be on the consumer, because I definitely feel so much pressure to buy the right clothes, food storage containers, whatever it is, right? To be more environmentally sustainable, to protect my children's bodies, all the things. And it's exhausting and frankly impossible to do perfectly. Like, no one person is going to have the impact on the environment that we need for the societal conscious, right? It does have to be at the government level. And the approach that you've taken to addressing the middleman is so smart. Thank you for doing this incredible work. We have talked on the side about social media and how social media can be a really draining draining tool for sharing information. And one of the things I was thinking when you were talking about the younger generation is they are so targeted on TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is for products, right? Whether it's fast fashion, I know for young girls, it's skincare and makeup. So how do we, and as you're thinking about growing and shifting your business, how do we move more towards this community-minded sharing of information, especially for the younger generation that is not embedded within these toxic media channels? And you might not have the answer, but I'm curious to hear what you're thinking.
My first reaction to that is don't give them the screen. And I think that already that's happening within the younger generation from within. I have been really excited to read a few articles here and there talking about how teenagers are choosing not to have the screens because they're seeing our generation glued to them. And even though we're like, as responsible adults, we can balance our social media intake and whatever. Meanwhile, I'm like running my business halfway on my phone. I'm in the car, driving to take a beautiful hike, taking a call with somebody in London, I can't even put my work in a container so that when I'm not working, I'm fully present. And the kids are picking up on that and they're looking at that and going, I don't know. So like the last article I read about this, I think it was in the Times, it says the shift is happening. And as parents, we would love to think that it's coming from us, but it doesn't. It comes from the kids and it comes as a reaction to the parents. And they're seeing us struggle so hard and talk about it so much. They're seeing that it's not doing us any good. That is an optimistic point of view. Personally, I am not on social media very often. I have an account and I am on there about once a month, and it is like ice cream for me. I get on there with a bowl of ice cream and I'm like, oh my God, look at all this fun stuff. And look who just had a baby. It's like, I find it really funny because it feels just like, I'm like, of course, it's been listening to me this whole time. So everything that I've been talking and thinking about for the last month is bubbling up like a magic show. I see how it can be so addictive. And I think the answer is to just stop. And I mean, I really, truly believe that. I think that it's not up to us to change it. So social networks, even online, I think are a very beautiful thing. It only switches over into social media when it becomes an advertising platform and when they're offering you something that you didn't choose to be in your network. So when a social network becomes something else, it's just a flood of things that you haven't chosen. And whoever starts the social network, it's their choice in what direction we take it. And then again, that just comes back to where we are in American politics, in the way that our economy is shaped, what our priorities are. And I mean, that has to change.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, we have boys who are the same age. My oldest is begging for a phone, so he has not tuned into the switch of the younger generation yet. But I'm curious, just on the subject of kids. So you are a family of 5 in your house, blended family, and I'd love to hear more about how you've blended your families. You've done such a beautiful job, and how you approach. We'll bring it back to dinner with 3 boys who are all growing and have very different schedules, and how you manage all of that.
It's not easy. I'll say that. Yes, we are a blended family. We have 3 boys who are 10, 11, and 13. And the blending of the family is by far my greatest triumph. It truly is. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I say I because it has certainly been a we thing, but it has been I that has really been pushing the blending. And I think the feminine energy is the collaborative energy. And so like I took that role gladly. And so I do feel like I can say, and it is my biggest triumph. Let's talk specifically about the food. So I grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains and with my parents were divorced and I grew up mostly with my mother. Before I was born, she had a health food store called Oats, Groats, and Common Folk, I think. And so my mom is one of those 70s moms that was just incredibly health conscious, no sugar in the household, carob chips all day, textured vegetable protein in our spaghetti sauce, like trying to see if we could tell if it was beef or not. Every year she would go to a farm and pick out a cow to be slaughtered, which we would share with another family. So this is the upbringing that I had. Fast forward, I meet a man up here, Colin, my partner now. He was raised in Columbus, Ohio. Food was not important in his family. His mother did not cook, TV dinners, candy, the whole shebang. And then we come together in one household. And I was like, oh my God, triggered like crazy. You know, he would come home with like packs of Swedish fish, and we just had two polar opposite upbringings. And so when I'm like, can you buy $9 organic blueberries? He's like, like the fact that I'm buying blueberries to begin with is a good thing. Like, why $9 organic ones? But over the last 2 years, we have certainly met in the middle. And that place is one where I do most of the grocery shopping. And I would say I do about 75% of the cooking, although Colin is very willing and able, but he also just lets me have a bit more control. And then as far as like practical dinners, you know, I buy the white flour pasta and that's fine, you know, and we make sugary desserts and I actually love that, but we don't bring the candy in the house anymore. And occasionally I buy regular blueberries if they are $12 a pint or for the organic ones. So we've hit a place where I realize a lot of my upbringing really created a lot of fear and I've let that go and it feels really good. Like the kids are fine. You know, the kids are fine. And what's most important, I think, is that we are sitting down at the table together as many nights a week as possible, enjoying the meal together. And that for me is really important. It's also really important to me that everybody try the things that I cook and that I get a thank you for the meal. They don't have to say, I loved it or that was delicious necessarily, but just a thank you for preparing that. And that's really important to me.
How do you not enforce, maybe that's not the right word, but how have you encouraged that thank you? Because I've actually never, every now and then the kids will, or I will model that. Nolan does a lot of the cooking, so I'll say thanks for cooking. But how do you get them to say thank you?
You ask them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with boys.
Don't forget to thank the chef. And yeah, thank you. You know, like this is something Colin and I talk a lot about because he uses sarcasm a lot. And as a male figure, I think a lot of men use sarcasm to try and like say what they mean without it being like weighted or aggressive. So I understand where it comes from. But I have realized with children that when you just speak very clearly and ask them for what you want or say what you truly mean, it's a direct line. It's the clarity that we're all seeking all the time in life. And with children, it's especially important. And when we use sarcasm or like we joke around, like often Kurt, my son, will be like, why are you fake laughing? And I'm like, you're right. I'm trying to lighten a mood when really I just want to say what I need to say. And that's like, hey guys, make sure to thank the chef. And they do because they realize that I just spent the last hour and a half cooking it.
The clarity is so, I mean, this is becoming a running theme, right? Even from hosting and how we sell clothing products. And I think, especially at this age, at least for me, something is happening where I'm not able to disguise what I really mean or want to say with fluff that makes other people feel better anymore. And you realize how clarity is so much more effective because everybody knows what's going on when you're clear. So I love that, just direct asking, because I think Dimity in our house, try to model the thank you a lot too. And usually the girls pick up and they're like, oh yeah, thank you, mama. But sometimes it's just like, can I have a thank you for the meal? And that's all it is. Then there's no resentment. There's no question.
I do also think that girls and boys are different, and still, in our society, we're creating space where boys aren't expected or appreciated when they show their gratitude and they show those softer sides, they show collaboration. We still are like, in a lot of ways, like, be a man, and even though we're not saying it as overtly, it is still there. So I think with boys, often we have to really help them show gratitude and be like, this is good. This makes you feel good. This makes me feel good. And it just creates connection. And actually I have a business teacher, and she's always saying, clarity is connection. Clarity is connection.
Yeah, the work that I'm doing, that I work with schools and in education, and the organization I'm working with right now, which is amazing, Transcend Education, they have 5 conditions for success with schools. And the first one is clarity. And it's, this is part of, I don't know if you've heard of the Noster model of change, but there are conditions you need in place to have success. And if you don't have clarity, that leads to confusion, misinformation, different perspectives, people having different stories about a situation. So it is so crucial. I'm going to take that more into my family life. Before we close out this episode, we want to make sure you know how much we love you and appreciate you listening. If this conversation made you think of someone in your life, we'd love it if you shared it with them. Send a text, a DM, however you share the things that inspire you. That's the best way to help spread these beautiful real-life stories from our incredible guests. We're really grateful for your support. Back to the episode. I wanted to go back to the blending question. It's so cool that just the way you described it as that being your biggest triumph, I feel like we need to celebrate that kind of thing more. Emma and I are, our parents split up when we were 16, and then our dad got remarried. He divorced that wife as well. We've been through different scenarios of blending, and it wasn't until I moved here really and met you and Shira and some other families who have just done such a beautiful job that I understood that could be possible. And you talked about the feminine energy being more collaborative. I wonder if you could share, like, specifically, how did you make this come to fruition? What were the things that you did to lend to the success of the blending?
So when we first moved in, it was very much myself and my son Kurt and Colin and his boys Roman and Malcolm. And each of us had our way of doing things, like, when is screen time? What sort of video games do we allow? The food thing was such a big issue. And everybody was a little bit like, what are we doing in this house together? Like, it definitely was like, everybody was standing on eggshells being like, what is happening? And what I chose to do first was to really focus on Colin's boys and showing each of them independently why I was here and that I loved them. But that was really it. And so like I would take opportunities to go pick his kids up from after school activities or run them to friends' houses so that I had 20 minutes in the car just one-on-one to be able to say, I just want you to know that I really care about you. And I would also share my own upbringing, and I would say, my parents split when I was 5, and this is what I went through, and I know it's not easy, but this is my relationship now with my stepsisters and with my half brother and XYZ, and just be like, just so you know, I care about you. And I would take moments to ask them if I could give them hugs before they walked out the door. So basically just taking the space to show them that I cared. And then again, asking my partner, Colin, to do the same with my son, because it wasn't intuitive for him to look for that time to spend with Kurt one-on-one because he's got his own 2 boys. It's my son who didn't have brothers and occasionally being like, go hug Kurt. Go hug Kurt, So creating that. And then Colin and I arguing about independence versus together. I can remember one of our earliest argument where I'm like, we have to create boundaries. And he's like, why do we need boundaries? Like, why does everything have to be like pinned up? And I was like, because it makes people feel safe. And through so many conversations, hard conversations, anger on my side, anger on Colin's side, and just letting it out. And readings that we both asked each other to read, and then finding the commonalities between what we both valued and speaking them, talking about them. Like, this is how we got to where we are. And just recently, I wish I could remember the name of this book that we're reading. We haven't gotten past chapter 1. We're reading it separately, and then we're supposed to talk about it. We haven't even talked about the chapter, but just reading it. The chapter is about making sure your unit as a couple is always prioritized, because if you are strong, everything else falls into place. Your children feel safe. Your children have a North Star. Everything else follows. We haven't even talked about the book yet, but both reading that chapter, oh my God, the shift in our household is so real, because Colin and I are looking at each other being like, oh man, we better get this right. And so we're trying even more. And I can feel how different it is. And it's these subtle things through just like being together, through reading, through all of it. And I mean, we are 2.5 years into this blended family. I can't even imagine what 5 years is going to look like. I mean, I'm just like the reward, the love that I feel back from Colin's kids is so transformative for me. And it's all I've ever wanted, is to have a big household. So when my ex and I split, when Kurt was 3 years old, I was like, oh no. But this life dream, it's here. It's coming to fruition. It's really incredible.
Virginia, you are such an amazing woman. I know I've told you that before, but you really are. And thanks for sharing that. It's so beautiful to hear that. And as someone who's been the child in that situation, you have to just the intentionality of getting to know your stepkids and making them feel like family and building this new family is so beautiful. What book are you reading?
I wish I could remember the name of it. Colin,
okay, you'll have to tell us.
He read about it in the Times or something and ordered it, but I'll send you a picture.
Okay, you'll have to send us a link. We are almost at time. We could talk forever. There's so many more questions that I want to ask you, but I think to close, I would love to hear what your go-to meal is. Let's say go-to meal with your family when you're cooking for all 3 boys and Colin.
My go-to meal is probably boneless, skinless chicken thighs cooked a million different ways with steamed broccoli with like garlic oil and lemon and roasted sweet potatoes. That's it.
Yum. That's one of my favorite go-to meals as well.
It like hits all my boxes for like, nutrition, and all the kids eat broccoli. So that's the green. And it's like what we always have in the freezer, boneless, skinless chicken thighs. That's it.
Love it.
And a margarita.
Nice.
I do love a cocktail during meal prep time. I feel like my dad calls it a mood adjuster, and it totally is, especially because Colin and I both work from home. So when your space is your professional space, and then you're supposed to just at 6 o'clock transition it into this like warm family space, I find that a margarita helps.
That's Nolan always, so he does most of the cooking and he'll have a beer or some wine and put on some music. And he always jokes that when he comes home and I'm cooking, it's like silent and I'm just standing there chopping vegetables. Often I'm listening to something, but it is like when I do remember to maybe pour myself a little wine or put on I often just tell Alexa to play Italian dinner music. It does really shift the mood and make it more of an inviting space and fun process. So that is a good reminder. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and I think cooking, you have to shift the mood and make it a fun process, because it can become quite the chore if you're doing it 5 or 7 days.
That's the whole reason we started the podcast.
There you go.
Well, Virginia, it was such a pleasure to get to know you and talk to you for this hour. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me on. This has truly been my pleasure. Thank you.
Aww.
Before you go, I just wanted to say one more time, thank you so much for listening to Dinner Last Night. Feeding our families isn't always easy, but dinner is almost always a story worth sharing in a meal that connects us all. Dinner Last Night is co-produced by us, Emma Frisch and Dimity Palmer-Smith, your twin hosts behind the show. And the episodes in season 2 are edited by Stuart Hetzler. The theme song We Can't Stop Dancing To is written by Emerson Longstory Bartlett, featuring Drew Martin on saxophone. And yes, that's a chorus of our kids you hear singing along. To get all the juicy extra bits that accompany each episode, like recipes and giveaways, you can subscribe to our newsletter at dinnerlastnightpod.com. And every episode includes a special giveaway, which you can enter through the link in the show notes or by heading to bit.ly/DLN giveaway. That's DLN giveaway, all in lowercase. You can also follow us on Instagram at dinnerlastnightpod for guest highlights, micro street interviews where we buck up and ask strangers what they had for dinner last night, dinner time inspiration, and cheesy twin moments. From our table to yours, thank you so much for being part of this journey, and thank you for listening.
What you have for dinner last night? For your daughters and your sons versus where you come from. What you have for dinner last night? How many meals can you make in your mind? What you have for dinner last night? You got some tips for saving some time? What you have for dinner last night? Dinner last night. I think I know you better if I know your recipe. Think we're in this together, 'cause we all gotta eat.